Hi, recently I replaced the main thermostat and properly bled the entire cooling system. In this video, I will show you how the engine should warm up with a properly functioning thermostat. If you are watching this video because you are looking for an answer to why your engine is not warming up or why the temperature is dropping, I will explain everything in a moment during the drive, because situations like this, in addition to higher fuel consumption, can lead to damage to the glow plug control unit, blown gaskets, cracked coolant fittings, and even engine overheating and seizure. So it is worth acting preventively. There is no point in waiting now. I am getting to work right away. The car on which I will perform the test is a BMW E61 with a 3-litre diesel engine that I have been rebuilding over the last half year. When I bought this car, it was not in the best shape in terms of aesthetics, but fortunately, it was not a very big challenge to bring everything back into order, and it went very smoothly. However, restoring full functionality of the engine-related systems took some time, and one of the main problems turned out to be the main thermostat. And as it later turned out, also the EGR exhaust gas cooling thermostat. When I thought that I had already replaced everything and that the rest was just a formality, it turned out that properly bleeding the entire system so that no air bubbles remained is a real art. And the whole operation of flushing the cooling system, replacing the thermostats, and bleeding the system took up my entire weekend of after-hours work. Now I will tell you how I managed to handle all of this somehow, thanks to which you will be able to deal with your own car in any situation in just a moment, instead of wasting several days on it. Because I will tell you absolutely everything you need to know and explain what the potential problems are caused by when it turns out that something is not right. If I may ask you now to spend 4 seconds clicking the like button under this video or writing a comment, it will be a wonderful reward for me for all the hours spent putting this material together to explain everything to you. Thank you. In the meantime, during these 2 minutes of my talking while driving normally, the temperature increased to 33 degrees. And here, in practically every case and in every car, nothing special will happen until around roughly 60 degrees. So I will speed up this stage a bit to focus on the most interesting points. Why do we stop at this specific temperature reading? Because most often, at this value, damaged and faulty thermostats open. What does this mean in practice? It means that an engine which should still be warming up stops gaining temperature because the coolant circuit has been opened and the water pump actively pushes cooled fluid from the radiator into the cylinder head, which prevents it from reaching full operating temperature. Why does this situation occur? Most often it happens due to a failure of the main thermostat, which usually, because of age, does not open within the temperature range specified by the manufacturer. Sometimes the reason is also the poor quality of the thermostat itself, because some low-quality aftermarket replacements may not work correctly from the very beginning or may fail literally after just a few months of use. Additionally, this type of problem with engine warm-up can also be caused by a faulty EGR cooler thermostat and the heat exchanger thermostat. Although not all of them have to be installed in your car, it all depends on the version of your vehicle. In the car I am driving now, all 3 that I mentioned are installed. Failure of each one individually gives very similar symptoms, with the most noticeable and serious effects caused by a problem with the main thermostat, because only it is able to completely block the engine from reaching full operating temperature. The other 2 will interfere somewhat, but in the end, the engine will still be able to warm up to 90 degrees if the main thermostat is working properly. Although it will take much longer. For example, instead of 15 minutes of warm-up, it may need 25 minutes. This affects all other systems, and now I will explain to you how, because this is extremely important. Why is taking care of a properly working thermostat so important? Because driving all the time with an underheated engine significantly reduces its performance. First, it causes much higher fuel consumption, which results from the lack of optimal operating conditions for the cylinder head. Only around 90 degrees does everything start to work in ideal conditions. Second, with a cold engine, the oil pressure is not fully correct. Temperature affects the viscosity and lubricating properties of the oil, which are worse at lower temperatures. Do not get me wrong, everything still works and there is lubrication, but it is slightly worse than when the engine is fully warmed up. Third, If the engine constantly operates at around 60 degrees, it means that the glow plug control module is continuously heating the glow plugs in the cylinders, and in most cars, it stops heating them only at around 75 degrees. If the engine never reaches this temperature, it means the controller is working all the time, which practically guarantees overloading the entire glow plug controller and burning it out. And the same applies to the glow plugs themselves. Regenerating the glow system is not cheap, which is another sensible reason to take care of a properly working, good quality thermostat. We have already passed 74 degrees on the gauge, which means that my thermostats have been working correctly up to this point. Before we reach 88, because that is exactly the opening temperature of my original thermostat, I will tell you about one more most dangerous scenario that will stop the warm-up process and, even worse, can cause complete engine damage and immobilization. The worst part is that this last issue can happen when you are trying to fix everything after you have put in the work and replaced the thermostats, even if you do everything correctly. This applies to absolutely every car, regardless of year or brand. I'm talking here about the most important element, which is properly bleeding the cooling system after performing any work related to draining the coolant. Why is this so important? Because every car has its own individual bleeding procedure. It is a specific sequence of steps that you must follow to remove all the air trapped in the coolant hoses, in the cylinder head, and in all the chambers that may have become airlocked during our intervention. If we do not carry out proper bleeding, then during engine warm-up, the air trapped in the system, especially when there is a large amount of it, for example, in a coolant flange, will completely block circulation. As a result, there will be no cooling at all, which creates a real and serious risk of overheating and engine seizure, especially in cars like mine, where there is no separate analog temperature gauge. The only option then is to monitor the temperature via the OBD port or with an additional externally installed gauge. The second possibility, equally dangerous, is a situation where only a small amount of air remains and circulation is present, but it is disturbed. Sooner or later, the air bubbles trapped in the system will reach the cylinder head. If the head is still cold, nothing will happen, and the system will push them into the expansion tank on its own. However, if the cylinder head is already hot, the air that comes into contact with it will immediately turn into steam, which will rapidly increase pressure and lead to blown gaskets, boiling of the entire cooling system, and may also cause coolant hoses to burst and electronics to be flooded. As you can see, with the cooling system, you have to be especially careful and well prepared because this will help you avoid all costly problems. There is also good news because I have prepared material on rebuilding the cooling system, in which you will find all the necessary knowledge to do it wisely and fully professionally. And I wanted to invite you to watch this material now. In the meantime, my engine has reached the target operating temperature of 88 degrees, and in this way I gained certainty that after the overhaul of my entire cooling system, everything is exactly as it should be. In cases when I put a heavy load on the engine, this temperature can rise to 90 or even 91 degrees, but after a moment of rest, it will always return to 88 degrees. Is everything working correctly in your car? Let me know in the comments. See you!